What's up, guys? I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album, Polywana, Polygondwanaland. That might be it. So, King Gizzard is back with this album I will not try to pronounce again. This is their fourth record this year. And supposedly, as they've originally announced, there's going to be 5 this year. But anyway, they've done quite a lot of experimenting throughout the year, taking this opportunity to come out with a whole bunch of music, but all of it very different from the rest of their stuff. You had Flying Microtonal Banana. These album titles, man. They were experimenting with these microtonal instruments, which led to some very compelling, sort of Eastern-influenced music. Thinking, maybe Middle Eastern or Egyptian type themes. Which was a really great album. Personally, I like that first one and this new one, the fourth one, the most out of the material they've done. It's kind of a toss-up between that one and this one right now, for which I would say is their best of 2017. Next was Murder of the Universe, which I thought musically was fantastic. It was kind of like their previous release from the previous year, Nonagon Infinity, as far as these just aggressive rock and roll psychedelic type songs. The problem with Murder of the Universe for me, and I did do a review about it previously, was that it got a little too bogged down in that spoken word stuff. I was kind of on board for the first track and the second track, but by the time that third one came along, I thought there was just way too much spoken word stuff going on. On this new album, on this track, The Castle in the Air, I started to hear the voice again, and I got a little nervous that it was going to take over, but it really doesn't, just very brief here. And thirdly, they did Sketches of Brunswick East, which was, a nice little dabble into the jazz world, trying some type of stuff like that, which I didn't get around to reviewing, but I thought was fairly enjoyable, just like a pretty mellow outing. So here we are with Polygondwanaland, I think that was how you say it, which somehow takes all these genres they've been exploring and throws them into a blender, throws in about 50 more, and it just works somehow. I think this is a fantastic album. Like I said, either this or Flying Microtonal Banana would be my favorites of this year. But this album just sort of takes you on that trip. The first track, Kremlin Castle, is quite a long one, clocking in at a little over 10 minutes, and again, showing that they're taking everything they've done this year and just smashing it together. You get some of those Eastern influences from Flying Microtonal Banana. You see it on this track and throughout some of the others, some very, different and intricate sounding beats that you might hear in jazz. And as well as the sort of science fiction and progressive type nature of Murder of the Universe. Kremlin Castle just has some fantastic guitar work, whether it's the various riffs going on throughout or the solo type sections. A lot of great melodies there. Again, a lot of influences, that Eastern influence coming in on the riffs, which I just love. Well into the song, it sort of breaks down into this cool, kind of psychedelic, kind of progressive sounding keyboard section. Moments like that, and you see it come up again in a couple tracks later. The song Deserted Dunes Welcome Weary Feet, where that keyboard type of theme comes up again. Think kind of like the Stranger Things soundtrack if you listen to stuff like that. Very 80s, very psychedelic, very progressive. At times, the keyboards used on this album remind me of, earlier Rush, weirder kind of Rush stuff, which is pretty cool. But yeah, just to harp a little more on Kremlin Castle, it ends up building up to this sort of chaotic moment at the end. And overall, I like how it serves as a sort of overture for what you're getting for the rest of the album, where from this point forward, the tracks start to blend together like one long story. Some very interesting moments placed throughout, a song like The Castle in the Air comes to mind. There's a sort of almost like jammy part going on from the middle of the song on. It's pretty cool. Some acoustic instruments come in, which they've done stuff with acoustic instruments in the past, but they haven't in this kind of string of albums and some of the previous ones, so it was cool to hear that kind of stuff come in here. I mentioned the Stranger Things soundtrack, and I think soundtrack is a good way to describe this album. Clearly all the tracks tie together. I haven't quite discerned the story that's going on here, but, it just feels like a soundtrack to its own story, if that makes sense. A part like Inner Cell, where, this sort of orchestration comes in, before, kind of really growing into the more proggy keyboards and stuff like that. It really has a cinematic aspect to it that, the previous albums this year certainly haven't had. That proggy kind of stuff comes out again on the beginning of Loyalty, some really cool keyboard parts. Again, that kind of 80s feel to it. Before ultimately, a cool little, off-the-cuff drum beat comes in. Some really great rhythmic bass lines going on. The bass gets to shine quite a lot on this album, which I do enjoy. And finally, another big standout for me is Searching. Another track that, again, just, throwing more types of genres at the wall and just seeing what sticks. And, it all just kind of works out for them. Here it's a very dark and eerie instrumental with some tribal-like drums going on. The use of hand drums in here is particularly effective. It makes for a very, kind of dark, moodier type section, but definitely one that kind of builds up your anticipation for the next track, before ultimately concluding with the fourth color, which, brings some of that aggressive type instrumental back from, Murder of the Universe or Nonagon Infinity, and some of their previous stuff, ultimately just making for a great closer, which ends up being a great album. Like I said, it's pretty crazy that one band can meld so many different types of genres together, and it just kind of works. This makes for a sort of science fiction-y journey that, Murder of the Universe did, but this does much better by not getting bogged down by those spoken word interludes. And overall, there's just so much going on here. Definitely a really great and fun album to listen to. So I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. Something else that I thought was pretty interesting about it, this album was released into the public domain, which allowed for anyone to press it onto record, anyone to put it on CD, do whatever you really want with it. I thought that was interesting. I hadn't seen that done before. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of the album in the comments. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.